Hi buddy, my name's Shane, and I just got done explaining how differentials work to my cameraman, who is a car guy. And this right here is the infamous 9-inch rear end. And I'm about to explain to you how this thing works. Now, in almost any application, when it comes to the rear end, and I don't mean the one you sit on, the one you put in a car, the way one of these bad mamma jammas works, your drive shaft goes right here, and as you apply power, this spins, which drives your axle shafts through a whole bunch of components in here, and I'm going to explain how these work and what they look like. But first, on a rear end like this, which is again the infamous 9-inch rear end, you got to take 4 bolts per each side, pop one of these out, which by the way, these don't come out easy at first. We set this up for this, just like so. And then this right here, which is only to the 9-inch rear end, is what we call the center chunk. And this can be a little heavy, but you pull these bolts out right here, grab one of these like so, and of course, again, these don't come out easy normally. As you can see, even I'm still having problems with it. Usually use a couple of tools here to pull this thing apart. We're gonna give her a little jiggle. Slide one of these under here, which this one's a little small. And like so, this is where the business happens. Now right in here, like I said before, drive shaft goes through the yoke right here, and it spins what we call the carrier. And this is your carrier, and it spins that, which is hard to see in here. There is an actual gear that's attached to this yoke, which runs off this gear, and that is called your ring and pinion. Now, when that comes through to spin, it spins this whole chunk. Now, in this application, which is hard to see, this is actually open inside, so unfortunately, we don't get that nice posi 2-tire burnout. But what you do, if you want to change it, is simply pull these 4 bolts, pull this carrier out, and you're going to split this carrier by pulling these ring gear bolts out, and there'll be 2 spider gears inside here that are on the side and on the top. And basically you can put either what they call a lunchbox inside there, or you can change this whole carrier to something that locks it solid all the time. But like some of you may know, when you lock one of these things solid and you take a corner, she's gonna chirp. But where a locker per se, it's just what it does is only spins both tires when one starts slipping. So when you take a corner, you don't get that chirp. You get a nice turn, and when you whack the gas, you wanna do that 2-tire burnout, that's when it happens. But pretty basic in here. You know, it might look a little complicated if you've never done it. And of course, there's bearings on each side, and there's adjusters here as well. So when you put one of these together per se, to set your backlash, which backlash on a differential is the little bit of slop you get between the yoke, which is attached to your pinion gear, to the ring gear. And you set that with a 9-inch with shims that you can't see because this one's pretty greasy on this front piece here. which has a bearing in here, but there's shims between this casting and this casting, which sets the depth of the pinion. And these little slack adjusters here, which are hard to make out, you spin these either direction to shim this ring gear. And again, that's getting into more detail on how you would put one of these together, but basically in a nutshell how these things work, pretty basic. Drive shaft goes into the yoke, yoke spins this contraption right here, which is the differential where the business happens. When this spins, these splines in here spin each axle shaft, which sends you down the road. So this is the business. This is the differential out of this 9-inch rear end. And what basically happens here is you have your yoke, which is this, which the drive shaft gets connected to, and the power that is applied from your engine through your transmission through that drive shaft turns this yoke, which turns what we call a carrier, which has your ring gear on it that spins the axle shafts. Now in this application, which you can't see the inside, there is spider gears, as they call them, inside here. And basically picture 2 gears like this up on top of each other and 2 gears like this. And as they rotate from this spinning, it basically rotates the axles forward. But if it's open, which is those 4 with no clutch discs or anything on either side, you'll only get 1 tire that will actually spin if you're trying to do a burnout. Now, a cure to that is what they call a locker, or some cases they call a lunch box, and with the 9-inch, you can put what they call a mini spool or a full spool in one of these, which basically takes that set of gears that I explained inside there and prevents them from having only 1 tire spin and locks both axle shafts. Now that's what we get when we call the true posi burnout. But with one of these, one of the great things is how easy they are to gear. You know, basically you have a casting here with some bolts, and you zip these out. This comes off. You can actually keep this together if you want the yoke on there, and you have the pinion gear, which is what's pushing the ring gear. And when you pull that out, you can obviously change that, take the yoke off and push it through this casting and change the gear set to whatever size you want. Or another thing that you can do is basically just get a whole other center section of this axle and put whatever gear you want in it, pull the shafts like I showed, drop it in, and you have a different gear ratio. A lot quicker than a standard differential. That's why we figured we'd use this to show you guys how this works. I hope I helped educate you on how a differential works, and thanks for tuning in.